Okay, so let's pivot a little bit here. 2020, 2021 obviously has provided some challenges to this whole thing. Having a high school senior this year, uh, you know, taking the ACT test was a nightmare over the last
Mhm.
year. I know we went through your program, and I think we were scheduled to take the test in April,
Mhm.
which got pushed and pushed and pushed
Mhm.
and pushed. And we finally found one location, an hour and a half away that we were able to take it in July.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's
Crazy.
happened for a long time. So let's talk about the adjustments that you've had to make over the course of the past year because of COVID.
I think the biggest one is simply I had to move classes to an online format like Zoom. Uh, and my preference definitely is to be able to be, in the room with kids and working and walking around. Given the nature of what we're faced, we didn't have that option. And so I knew if I didn't transition to this, simply because typically I teach out of the Eden Prairie High School, you couldn't go into those buildings, they were locked down. And so, I converted the course, figured out how to do it in an effective method, an online presentation. And it was interesting, where I had some concerns at the beginning, because to me, that quality piece is so important that I want to make sure this is worth their time and money. And so really worked hard to develop. And it was interesting, after we got going, there were kids that would tell me they actually preferred it online, simply because, if you look at my winter class this year, there were days, where you have a lot of snow. There are days where it's super cold. Well, they don't have to get up 45 minutes earlier, take a shower, get dressed, drive into the Eden Prairie High School, and then be there for class for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so there really were some advantages and things I learned about going forward, how I can now offer videos of classes to kids who can't get there. And so I can think of classes last summer where I had kids up north at a fishing lodge that were able to watch and participate live. And so I really think it's just the evolution of instruction. And to think that a classroom is the only place that it can happen. Now, again, that's where I'd prefer it to be. And I know for my classes this summer and beyond, it will be in the classroom. But to have that option for kids to learn in a distance method too, I think is very viable and something that we'll see more and more going forward.
Okay. So what are the other things that kind of happened industry-wide with universities and certainly with the admissions process? And we also saw it with some of the merit aid stuff. Because a lot of the schools went test optional.
Mhm.
All right. So, in adjusting to COVID, because so many kids had a hard time getting in to take those tests and maybe doing prep courses, that thinking it wasn't fair, and so they went test optional.
Mhm.
And there seems to be some steam behind that as a ongoing movement. Um, so what changes or what kind of challenge do you think that presents moving forward?
Well, I think in an ideal world, obviously, that is the way to go. If colleges would commit to interviewing every student and finding his or her strengths and really getting to know them, problem solved, right? Wouldn't need to take an ACT.
Right.
Is that going to happen? No, it's not. For the testing optional piece, what I've seen thus far, I would be very careful with making assumptions about it. And here's why. When they say testing optional, let's just put you as a parent in a situation where you've got a child who has taken the test and has a good score. And now your child is going to be compared to a student who hasn't taken the test. Who do you think the school is more likely to give a scholarship to? Who do you think the school is more likely to admit, especially if it's a selective school? And so I think you have to look at this from the lens of reasonability to kind of know what happens. In terms of the scholarships, how would you argue against a kid who has a higher score, more data to support them? And really, that's what this is about. Colleges admit students, especially the more selected ones, because it gives them academic credibility. If you have high scores, they can advertise their incoming freshman class has this average GPA, this average ACT score. If that goes away, what happens to the the perceived selectivity of that school. It goes down, and that's their bank.
A good point. Yeah.
And so I would just say, I think it is good. I know a lot of kids who the ACT does not necessarily define them. But as a parent and as a student, you have some control in the sense that you don't necessarily have to forward your test scores. You can take it once, twice, 3 times, then decide, and maybe you want to then put more of your eggs into the basket that I'm going to make an exceptional application letter. I'm going to really build up my leadership and go those ways and really present myself that way. But you have that option. And I think to say that you don't want to take advantage of that option, I just don't know at this point that that would be the best decision.
No, and you said something there that was very important, and I would hope parents hear that, is, yeah, just because you take it, when you take it, there's a section in there that says, okay, here's the schools to forward your results onto. Just leave that blank.
Exactly.
Right? That will automatically forward it. If you do have a test score that you do want to forward, because you're like, hey, we think this is going to be helpful, you can always self-submit those test scores later on. And I think one of the things that families really should take a look at when it's optional, I think, like you said, it's a data point that the schools can use. And I think use it to your advantage. If you've got a great test score, use it, right? If you know that you're above a threshold for that school's scholarship, absolutely send it in, right? Because that's going to do nothing but help you. If that's going to help you with your admissions, whatever it is, if that's a score that you're real proud of and you think this is something in my plus column that's going to help me with that school, submit it. If you struggled with it, and like you said, an ACT score doesn't define the value of a student. There are plenty of kids who have really good GPAs, hardworking, good students, but they get in there and they kind of struggle with those tests. And, if you're sitting there with that score that either isn't maybe going to qualify for a scholarship or certainly not, give you the one that you're hoping to get, then maybe you do just go, hey, we're going to submit everything but that and let the rest of our strong academic record, speak for itself. What we've been seeing, in my space for schools so far here for this class of 21, and it's been a little bit of a mixed bag, even with our own daughter. We saw schools that solely based it on the GPA. So before where they would say, hey, if you have a 3.7 GPA and a 26 ACT, here's your $10,000. Just making the GPA, they gave you the $10,000. Other schools would maybe say, okay, that's our top tier, and the second tier down is, a 3.6 and a 24. We'll give you $8,000 for it. And without presenting the ACT score, they would say, okay, your GPA, gets it for you, but we're not going to give you that top one. We'll give you that second one down, and here's your $8,000. But still, that's great. And for that, maybe that kid who struggled and has a 22, but has a good GPA, has that 3.7, 3.75 GPA, along with some honors classes, things like that, you can still get that scholarship. So I think the test optional may actually be a benefit to families moving forward because they can play either side of the fence.
Yeah, and I know families who will send it to some colleges and not to others. So they do that. I mean, it's not an all or none. So when you fill out the ACT, you put the actual code of the college that you want it sent to.
Right.
And I think you can select up to 6. So yeah, you get to decide. And the other great thing is too, for most kids now, they're taking the test, I would say minimum of 2 times, maximum of 4 times. You can wait until you're all done with all 4, pick the best one, and then have those results sent to whoever. Again, it just provides more options. And for people, I think that's what this is about. It's awareness, how the process works, and then having the best overall options so you can find that best fit.
Right. Yep. I think that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Thanks so much to Steve for joining. And you can catch this on YouTube and our other social media feeds coming up soon. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep. Thanks, Jeff.